Y aquí estamos otra tarde más, estamos en vivo. De repente estamos en vivo, son las 12:26 del mediodía. Una hora perfecta para comer arroz, habichuelas, bistec encebollado. Olvidémonos de McDonald's, olvidémonos de Burger King, por favor. Por favor, la comida puertorriqueña, la más rica del mundo. Señoras, señores, la comida... Bueno, la comida caribeña, la más rica del mundo, ¿no? Y ahí tienen Puerto Rico, la isla del encanto. Y aquí estamos, esto es VeoBo desde el Cuadrado Gris, Barrio Obrero, Puerto Rico, para el mundo. Y hoy estamos con invitados especiales, ¿ok? Hoy tenemos una artista puertorriqueña, ¿ok? Criada en Virginia, ¿ok? Reside ahora mismo en Washington DC. Pero estamos en más de esto, les va a hablar Ana. Así que, Ana, ¿cómo estamos?
Hola, bienvenidos a todos, bienvenidos. Hoy nosotros tenemos una invitada muy especial. Ella es de la diáspora, nació aquí en Puerto Rico. Se llama Amber Robles-Gordon. Y nada, and I guess the interview is going to be in English. So let's sit back and let's talk to Amber right now. Tell us.
Hi, Amber.
Hi, Amber.
Hi, nice. I'm good. Thank
Welcome.
you for having me.
Welcome to El Cuadrado Gris.
And welcome back to Puerto Rico.
Yes. It's actually good to be back. We were kind of not rushed out, but in relationship to COVID-19, we thought we were going to be here a lot longer.
Okay.
But we left to go back to DC in March. We'd been here since January before that and made trips before that, but it's good to be back.
Excellent. Yeah, I know, like under these circumstances, these strange circumstances that we're finding ourselves in.
It is wild.
Oh my gosh.
It is absolutely wild.
So it's just completely like this world has changed from the last time I saw you.
It's turned over.
Yeah.
Isn't that wild?
And in like such little time, which is unbelievable.
If somebody would have said that we would have been in mask, to interact with each other or have to have a hand sanitizer, we wouldn't have believed them when we first met, right?
Totally. No, totally. And you were going to do an exhibition over in Sagrado Corazon.
Sí, yes.
And it, because of the circumstances, I guess they're moving you up to next year maybe or a couple months.
Well, what we decided was we would move it to a online platform.
Oh, good.
So it's currently online on View for their visiting artists program.
Oh, excellent.
And it was wild enough, but it wasn't only COVID-19. It was also the earthquakes.
Oh, right. Yes.
Because they didn't want to have anything in their physical space at that point because they were still trying to figure out what's going to happen next. And then on top of that, COVID-19 happened. So, we just decided to move it to an online platform.
Oh, wow. So tell me a little bit about yourself. Let's tell the public a little bit about yourself. Where were you born? You're Puerto Rican.
I am. I'm what I consider like Puerto Rican and Caribbean because my family's from not only Puerto Rico but St. Thomas. I have family in Antigua, Tortola. So I see myself as definitely Caribbean as well. Just
excellent.
Caribbean.
and we talk a lot about diaspora because in for me, I'm also diaspora. I was born in Ohio. My parents are Puerto Rican. I've spent more time in the United States than in Puerto Rico still. And I came here in 2007. And how does the diaspora obviously, like we have a lot of things in common with the idea of like, the loss of identity, who we are and things like that. But let's talk a little bit about diaspora before we dive in and look at your installations.
So I think that's a really good question. So one of the conversations that we started prior to this was about having to make a choice in relationship to because it's not just your cultural or ethnic composition, it's also how you appear to others.
Yes.
It is not only how I appear to myself. So you mentioned that you're a lighter Puerto Rican, and so when you've interacted with specifically Americans, how the dynamics change in relationship to your interaction, depending on how they take your
when I
color versus your ethnicity or culture, your orientation. So I have found that in my experience, because of my brownness, that I've had to choose, or I've chosen to choose my blackness and brownness. So being, under or in a box, African American,
Right.
or of African descent, which I'm perfectly fine with. And a lot of times I choose to identify with the diaspora because we are the people that need the identification. We are the people that need what I call like a social connection to an advocate, a continued advocate, a collective consciousness of, yes, I will choose this. To me, it's never been, in choosing my blackness or my brownness, I'm not choosing my Puerto Ricanness. I have just been able to, or I've had to have my conscience won't let me choose anything else.
Okay.
Because I've been put in so many situations where black and brown people I felt I needed them.
Mm-hmm.
The society made me feel like I needed more of us, more of me around.
Mm-hmm.
And then in some situations, Latinos did not see me as one of them.
Right.
That's a whole nother
And that's it
conversation.
happens to me too.
Yes.
I mean, it happens to me being a lighter skinned Puerto Rican. It's like
Yeah.
I had to choose.
Yes.
Because I do have white past sometimes, until I say I'm Puerto Rican.
Yeah.
So I decided myself that
Then
I
they
will
pull
say
your past back.
Yeah. Then they're like, okay, now you're not.
Imagine me that I'm Argentinian.
And
Yeah.
of German descent, but you're Latino.
I'm Latino,
Yeah,
100%. So it doesn't matter where my grandparents or
Yeah.
my parents come from. I'm Latino. I was born in Latin America and I'm Latino.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes it gets crazy.
It gets a
It
little more
does.
difficult for Latinos and Hispanics, because whoever filled up the census, you saw that there was like these different options that you could put in, the typical white, black, Asian, etc. But then there was a question right before that part where they would ask,
Your race.
"Are you Hispanic?" And they were like, "And Hispanic is not considered a race." And it's like, well, why are you putting it? And it's confusing because we're so many mixtures, and we're so there's so many different bloods in us. There's Native American blood, and there's also black blood, and there's also European blood and Taino,
Spain and and African. If you're talking about the makeup,
Yeah.
well, that is the collective labeling
Right.
of what is Puerto Ricans.
Exactly.
Because I have, in my own work, my preparation for the current body work that I'm working on called Place of Breath and Birth, I had to do research about, being Puerto Rican, being Boricua. And one of the things that I was doing was going back through some of the episodes of, I think it's Code Switch and on NPR. Oh, there's one other one. I can't remember the title of that, of the other, what are they called? They're not blogs. God, I was just asking somebody. They're what is that name? I feel like such an old person when I can't remember the name for a radio show.
Oh, like vlogs, like with with podcasts.
Yes.
Yes, I think we're okay.
A little bit old, right? Yeah. Anyway.
I was like, don't worry.
So my point was that through one of the podcasts, they were talking about how the problem with identifying with a race, a specific race, occurred for over time. Accumulation occurred for Puerto Ricans, and there was a couple of reasons. One was saying that there's such a pride in being Puerto Rican, of Puerto Rican descent, or that it's away from what is your race.
Right. Yeah.
And so one of the other things that came up was when Puerto Rico was established, that they would have their own governor. They were awarded, to some extent. I hate saying it that way, but that is what it was. Yes, their own governor. And this particular governor decided that he wanted to make PR not only a destination point, but also this unified place. And so what that meant to him was that he took away what I would consider like an ethnicity.
Right.
He made it so that everyone was Puerto Rican. And so it became something that he talked about in this high reaching and high like goal to be Puerto Rican and to also be, to my understanding of it, to be colorless to some extent. And so that, because it happened so early on, I want to say in the 1920s or 1950s, I can't remember. I know that's a big range, but I can't remember. But
1950s.
Thank you. And so that has been inherently part of the Puerto Rican culture since then. And that meant that they also, the U.S., I think it was the Congress, also allowed them to take off the question of race.
Totally.
To help him with his unification. So the problem with unification is that when it's a global entity that's saying, oh, don't worry about those individualized needs that you have that happen to deal with the color of your skin, is that the needs that you have do not disappear. They just become part of the mass. Right. In fact, and unfortunately, then they hover below what's called the majority. And then when you need funding and, the whole census and everything, then you can't single out your needs. You can't single out the data that happens to be able to support the needs, like, the amount of abandoned properties in Puerto Rico in specific areas, the problems with the pipes, the water, the sewage, and when it is centralized in main area, in areas that are, considered part of the ghetto, the barrio, then it becomes an issue.
Right.
So that's just one of the things that I've, through the research that.
Anna works in the census, so
I
she knows
worked
exactly what you are talking about.
Yeah, it's deep.
Yeah, and it's really difficult because, a lot of us are like, I identify myself as Latina, as Hispanic, but there's a lot of people here in Puerto Rico. They're like, I don't know what I am. I'm Puerto Rican, period.
Yes.
And it's good that they do have that idea, but you also have to put in that you are, Afro-Caribbean, African American. It's very important to put that information.
I would love to have race erased from the census.
So I don't agree.
I don't want to have it in my document white, black, or whatever. I would love that, or gender. Just, this individual, and that's it. That's all that you need to know.
The problem is that we don't live in a society that only goes by this individual and that's it. I cannot. We cannot get funding. We cannot get support. Our structures are so entrenched with the bullshit system that is race. I'm not saying I like it. I think it's for the birds. But in order to get out of it, we have to use the system as it is. And it means we have to use it correctly and more collectively. And we have to start changing our mentality when it comes to the beliefs that European and whiteness is all holy and all good, because that's bullshit. There is no such thing.
There's no such thing, right? And you were talking about the European gaze.
Oh, yes, the European gaze is part of what controls us, and a part of what continues to demean and diminish humanity.
Right.
Because it was used, colonialism, Christianity, and the other, legs of religion that were thrown out to other people as well, and used to control, used to curtail people's behavior. It's done so at the expense of really poor people and people of color, because they're not given the same value as a human being as those that have money and those that have power. And until we figure that out, it's disheartening that how many brown and black, even yellow bodies. And I say yellow, but you know what I mean. I don't mean color yellow. I mean people of color that are abused, misused, and just
even, we can see it here in Puerto Rico. There we have like una mala costumbre, a bad habit of saying that we're dumb, that we're stupid, that we don't function well, that the
You are
island is
lazy.
not, that we're lazy, which is not true.
I mean, that's
Because
that's a lie.
NASA, I want to bring this in. Not 25% of the workers in NASA are Puerto Rican.
Amen.
And it's
Exactly.
But
You're
I
correct.
I need to say real quick though, those terms, dumb, stupid, what was the other?
dumb,
Lazy.
Lazy. You know that those are not just terms used for Puerto Ricans. Those are used for people that are poor
Yes.
and or of color. So it's not a new thing. It's not a ironic thing.
But,
It's very strategic.
Exactly, because you don't have to pay the money. You have to pay them if they are lazy and stupid.
And you don't have to hold them in a certain value. You don't have to give them the funding they need. You don't have to clean up their streets. You don't, especially if they
Same schools, same hospitals, same.
if they don't realize that they are worthy because they are human beings, then yes, you can call them dumb and lazy. I mean, part of it is it's a mentality that Trump is using right now. I can't. What is that? It's worse than mansplaining. What is that when you are using terminology to basically demean someone? You're raising your voice. I can't think of it.
No, I,
God, what is it called?
he says,
Be an asshole.
that would be like the street. Yeah, that
The
would be
street
the street term. Yeah, he's an ass.
I mean,
Yes, but it's
we are 20 years.
it's a strategy
we are
to
20
manipulate.
years in the 21st century,
Yeah.
and it's amazing
How we're
that
still fighting
how
for
we are
this.
fighting for those things like worse than the next 60s.
Yeah.
I mean, we are in deep waters
Yes.
right now. I mean, there is what's going on in Washington D.C. right now.
You're like at the epicenter.
Okay, we are going to be talking politics and art.
Yeah.
Yes. Then
All
we're
the
gonna.
ones that are connected. So this is very important. Okay, what's going on in Washington D.C. right now?
Okay, so I'm not a Washington D.C. reporter, but it's a really interesting dynamic. Like I said, I used to be a very patriotic person. I was speaking with a friend, and we were talking about how we don't understand how people are not voting or don't take that and realize that it is a privilege that Black and brown bodies have literally died for, been beaten, to the brink of death for. And I remember being 17, 16 and being excited that I was going to put part of a marker of my age, a marker of my growth and of adulthood, the beginning of adulthood was going to be that I voted. And later on, when it came to the Bushes, I started to question politics. I started to question the system, that and the legal system, because the only thing that triggered me right before that was the Emmys. I went to a magnet school in Arlington, Virginia, and a magnet school is when they pull people from other areas and they bring them into usually either a less or a more populated but ghetto area, or a more affluent area.
Right.
And what happened is that I realized all these what I would consider white girls were so excited about the Emmys and blah blah blah, and at one point I was interested in that too. But then I realized, wait a minute, we're Black and brown people. We're not winning.
Exactly.
Latinos and African Americans, we're not winning. And then it just dawned on me. So it was that, and then the realization that people in power and white societies have structured the political system and benefited from it after and after and after over again. And people of color were not benefiting from these systems.
Right.
So I think that this is just the 2020 version of a continued unpeeling of what is the unbalanced political system. I mean, if you think about it, the political system is working how it was supposed to because of how it was foundationally built. It is just that we have more connection to media, more resources to voice our opinions, more resources to record what's the occurrences of things that are happening, so that we can then collectively have these platforms to say, yeah, this isn't working for us Black and brown folks. And more of us are being vocal about it. More people in general are saying this is inhumane. And so they're doing things about it. So I don't think that this is relatively new. I mean, even the strategy that Trump is using. I was reading some articles about how they're comparing it to whether it's Nixon or one of the Bushes.
Yeah.
About how what legal something. Oh, God, it's where they use something that's happened in a racial occurrence, like whether it be someone like what happened to George.
Oh yeah.
George Floyd.
Yes, thank you. And so what happens is then people protest, and then there's unfortunately there's also looting, because protesting versus looting are two different things.
Two different things, yes.
And then the politician who is in power at that point comes out and he says, "I'm going to go hard on you. This politics, and you need to stay within the range of what is the lawful."
Right.
Right? And then it's a strategy of how you then navigate your police system and your army, unfortunately, against your citizens. The thing is, what happened differently this time is that COVID-19 happened. And we don't have a leader in place when it comes to the United States right now. We have a TV business personality. And so he's not a leader, so therefore he did not lead appropriately. And we've lost, 400,000 Americans as to date. It's probably more since the last time I've checked. But that is what deterred or kind of rammed into Trump's, racial political agenda. Because I do think that it would have been further along, actually. I do think that we would have been more in some sense of civil unrest because of what he's incited.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's put the country against each other.
He absolutely
in purpose.
On purpose.
Because right now, if you see the news, you see that Trump's fanatic followers,
his fan club,
yes, are using the patriotism that you were talking at the beginning.
Yes.
They are using the flag. They are using the
Yes.
boats. They are using the flags in the 4x4s,
Yes.
in the trucks.
Yeah.
So is someone behind Trump is thinking?
Oh,
really,
there absolutely is.
If this is not is not a like something that happens because of this guy.
No, this is political strategy.
This is political strategy,
Yes.
and this is a script.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
This is 100% a script.
Absolutely.
So right now you have
And the closest thing before this script was the Nazis, was Hitler.
exactly, and now they are using Antifa. So they are using Antifa. So if you don't vote for us, you will have Antifas in control of the country. So that's scary because
Well, it
a lot
could
of
be
people,
scary if
a
you're
lot of
not
people that do not
knowledgeable.
like Trump is gonna be voting for Trump, and that's what scares me.
Wait,
And
say
that's
that
what
again?
that a lot of people that are do not like Trump are gonna be voting for Trump because
Why
of
do you
the
think?
because of the Antifa thing. So
and the Democrats, how they're like kind of
people are
comparing.
thinking that all this communism is coming to United States, so we have to vote for this guy. That's what the whole media is involved right now and are trying to fight against of this script.
And they need to be, because what really is going on is that it's a level of misinformation, and a level of ignorance and underlying bias, and still racism. Because even on top of that, what that is saying is that there are certain people that still want to stay where they are. They want to still be in their homes. They want to still have a certain amount of power, certain amount of reach over everybody else. And it's unfortunate that they don't realize that there is enough for all of us.
Yeah.
If we treated people differently, if we actually treated people as citizens, if we actually treated each other better, we live in a world that is vast. So to me, that's saddening.
And it's kind of like, the other day I saw, a couple months ago, I saw a meme that someone had a sign in one of the Black Lives Matter protests that said, equality is for everyone. It's not pie. It's not like if you keep equality to another person.
Literally, capitalism has made it a pie.
Yeah.
If you have not divvied up, this is my portion. You cannot get any of my portion. And what's amazing to me is how people hide behind that and say that it's about money, it's about their wealth. It's also racism. It's also bias. It's also not wanting anybody other than yourself or that look like you to have what you have, or afraid that if they get some, that you are going to lose something. And it's a really, that whole crabs in a barrel mentality. It's shameful that we have established such a way of looking at wealth and power.
What do you think is going to happen? What do you feel? In my own artwork, there are certain concepts that or certain reasons why I don't go figurative. I am an abstract artist. I do sculptural installations, public artwork, and I deal with literally abstracting concepts and then pushing mediums. So I love to to cross fabric with chicken wire.
Yeah.
I love to assemblage. I love large scale installations. And I'm saying this because I think that we have to push back on some of the boundaries that exist. And it is extremely important. And I try to do that within my work. Okay, I just forgot the connection to what I was gonna, what was the original question that you asked me?
What do you feel is going to happen?
Oh.
Yeah, we're all like,
nobody knows.
No, okay, no, I just remembered the connection. So what I have to say is that in relationship to that is that sometimes there's certain aspects of this, what's happening in society, that I don't necessarily, I have to be really, really tactful about how I reflect in my work. Because what I believe about what we project into the universe is that if too many of us project it, if too many of us are negative, if too many people are putting out what we don't want to happen, then it will. I believe, I believe in like metaphysical practice. Yeah. I believe that if not even the whole world, if one community, like a full community, let's say that's 1,000 or 1,000 to like 6,000 people in a state decided that they would sit down and pray or meditate. Okay, I do believe that can raise the consciousness of a certain sphere of influence. Okay, and I say that because I don't want to say that I think that MoFo is going to win. I don't want, because I don't want to put that energy into the world. There are people, we don't know what the range of our actions truly are. So if I am to think that I don't know who this is going to reach, but I don't want it to reach people and say that I want you to believe that Donald fucking Trump is going to win again. No, I want you to do more, continue to do what you're doing. If you're doing what you feel is good and beneficial for this universe, for our society, if you can do a little more, do a little more. Call, sign petitions, do something extra. I rather use my energy to be on the positive side of this.
Totally.
I can't give. There's a certain point, like the beginning, when Trump was running and all this, and I was like, I refuse to put his face on my social media platforms. Because it absolutely does. And if you look at how he won, they took the whole bots and computer programs, and they fed us information, misinformation.
Yeah,
and
they fed us shit.
Yes. Yes.
Between fake news and misinformation, that's the world we are living today. So let's go to the positive.
The positive part of Amber
Exactly.
as an artist.
So that was the political.
That's the political part.
The political part.
Our political part too, also.
Yeah. So we have the website here.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about.
So our viewers are seeing the website also.
Okay. Cool.
So we can.
Not right now.
Not right now. Oops, sorry. Blooper.
Now.
Now we can see it.
Now they can see it. Yeah.
Okay. So if you go to mixed media
Where is that?
on the
On the
second
top, yeah.
tab, yeah.
Mixed media.
And then go to the first one down.
Right there.
Yes, place of breath and birth.
Takes some times.
The internet's a little.
Oh, okay. Okay, no problem.
There we go.
So this is the beginning of the works that I did for Sagrado de Corazon. And while I was here in Puerto Rico, I did eventually finish these 4 in the States because, like I said, we left in March because of the warnings that were. It wasn't even the warnings that were being put out by the U.S. in relationship to closing down or people with U.S. passports coming back into the U.S. It was more that the Puerto Rican governor was trying to shut down the airport, and I was like, "Babe, we got to go."
Yeah.
So, but yes, what happened is that in relationship to Sagrado de Corazon, I've always wanted to exhibit in Puerto Rico. You know, this is my birthplace, but because I was raised in the States and because my mom decided to, raise my brother and I in the States, I've never had that experience that other people have with the place where they were born. And although, I have a good portion of my family is definitely in St. Thomas, I had been there once during a summer. My brother and my mom deposited us at my grandmother's house. And so we were there for a summer. But then I hadn't been back to St. Thomas only twice as an adult, like in my late 20s. But never been back to Puerto Rico. So, and then my grandmother's kind of awesome. She worked for FEMA for years. Oh, wow. And so she was able to come back and forth. So every time she would get, sent on an assignment, she would basically then figure out how to reroute herself so that she would come and visit us. Oh, wow. So I always had that grandmother, Caribbean and St. Thomas influence. I'm very fortunate for that. But when it came to PR, I did not have that formal connection. And then for some reason, my grandmother, actually it's not for some reason, my grandfather was more of it was his family specifically was Puerto Rican. And so when he died, some of that connection died with it, unfortunately, with him. So I reached out to wish I could remember his name. I can't remember his name. He's a blogger. It's called PR News, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, yeah, Edwin.
See, yes. That's him. And so he'd been watching my work for a while. Yeah. And I finally one day I said, Edwin, in a message, I was like, I really want to be able to show in Puerto Rico. I want to be able to create work there and to have an experience with my birthplace. And so he said, okay. He's like, let's work on it. Let's see. And so it took years actually to have that formal connection. But he eventually got back to me and said, I want you to reach out to Norma Vila.
Yes.
And so I did. And she was like, I love your work and blah, blah, blah. And so I pulled together a proposal and decided the show was going to be called Place of Breath and Birth. And they accepted. And so it was supposed to happen in April 19. But that didn't happen because of the hurricanes.
Oh, right, yes.
Because of the...
earthquakes?
I'm sorry, earthquakes. Yes. And because of COVID-19. So we decided to put it on an online platform. But even before that, I was able to come back. I did a talk, a part of their visiting artist program, their newly started visiting artist program. And I had done 2 weeks prior, because that's when we still thought the show was going to happen. I came with my mother, and we stayed on the campus. We were here for 2 weeks, and we did all types of touring and museums, and that's how it kind of began. You know?
That's when the birth of it, the idea of it.
Yeah. One of the intricate parts of the series is referring to the rubber tree. Mm-hmm. I remember the first time I saw one on the campus, and it was huge. And the grass, like what I call like baby grass that's around it, and then literally the ecosystems that begin to build itself from the ground, from the roots, all the thick form all the way up. And so I took that imagery and that concept, and I put it into the works. And some of the works I changed them to geometric forms and sketches that I did while I was here. So they literally, in the middle of the work, they are on the bottom of the, like, picture a square, and then they come up in the middle, and then they root up into the air and of the canvas.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry. No, I was going to tell you. So the medium here, this is more collage. Are you doing more? Is it digital?
This is collage. This is collage and slight photography, cutting out of photographs that I took while either in a studio or while we were seeing the different spaces, and some sketch work.
And it's interesting how you've maintained your Caribbean identity. I can see it coming through, and not
That's
only
awesome.
Puerto Rican one, but I also see, also like the Antilles, and
Yeah.
it's a very interesting combination, because the majority of not all of the Antilles, they speak different languages. Not all of them speak Spanish. So we have French, there's Dutch, there's English, So you kind of have like that combination.
Creole.
And Creole, yeah.
Right.
And there's another one that's it's like a combination of Portuguese. It's like a Portuguese that's mixed with Creole that has another name. That actually it's a language that's disappearing little by little.
Wow.
Because it's not being used. But yeah, I do see that combination, and I'm not only talking about the colors, but also like the symbolism that you're using to represent those forms that could be flowers or festival or.
Can you scroll up,
Scroll it up, boss.
Absolutely.
please?
You tell me what I have to do, and I do it.
That's actually a picture my mother took. We were in front of. She wanted to get me to one of the botanicas.
Yes.
I can't remember what we were looking for, and so she started taking. My mother had such a good time.
Oh, that's so great.
And what I when we were there, we realized this was one of the first, if not the first, vacations that we took as mother and daughter.
Oh, wow. That must have been awesome. A lot of connection there.
Yeah, and so
Keep going.
Sorry.
There we go.
So that one's Isla de Encanto. Is that the one I wanted to talk about? I don't think that's the one I talk about. Well, this is fine, because what I wanted to talk about is the second most like intricate part of the work, which is the transition from day to night.
Yes.
So what we did in relationship to the studio space in the apartment that I ended up renting, I got a space that was on the third floor, because when we were going around looking for places to live while I was here, in my self-assigned residency, what I noticed was that there was a lot of problems with mildew, a lot of problem with flooding, and then not being repaired. And then I've had asthma as a child, so I couldn't take the risk of being in a situation where I would be exposed to, any type of fungus in that way.
Right.
And so luckily the apartment that we found was on the third floor. And there was an atmosphere. The room that I chose to have as my studio, it was like what I call 3-dimensional light.
Oh, nice.
So nice windows. And the air and the mosquitoes did not attack us up there. It was so essential. Okay? It was so essential. So one of the things that I began to notice as we were, day in, day out, as Rafael and I were there, is that you could see the transition of night and day. And then in between these little pockets, you could look straight out from my window. One of the windows, you could see all the way to because we were in Puerto Nuevo, and you can see the train station.
Oh,
the
right.
trains going by, and then beyond that, you can see the high rises. Because where we are, there's not a lot of high rises.
Right.
So it made the extent of our view so far out. And so one of the things I talk about is how you can see the socioeconomic differences in relationship to that area,
it unravels in front of you.
It peels away.
And then all of a sudden, here we live in Barrio Obrero, which is predominantly a lot of people that live here are Dominican. There's a lot of immigration here, and if you stand, because it's on a hill, if you stand, you see the whole barrio going, and at the end, what you see is the financial market buildings. So it's kind of like
the transition. It's amazing. Is it when you have, I was gonna say, when you have the insight to see that the layers of the society, as and the dividers of society.
Totally.
It was deep.
And you can tell definitely by the way that the streets transition. For example, the streets here, well, Sagrado Corazon is very nearby, which is a university, which is, part of the area. But a curiosity is the streets that are closer to the university have names, and they're names of flowers. Some of them,
I definitely noticed that they're names of flowers.
Violeta, or we have Avenida Sagrado Corazon. But when you get into this neighborhood, which the streets have been numbers in this neighborhood always, but they're only numbers. So you have 11, 12.
So where is the floral? Where is the floral beauty?
Yes,
and letters.
And letters. So it's kind of like how
it's a different level of attention, different level of priority.
Actually, our street is a number 13, and it's called
Tito Rodriguez.
It was renamed as Tito Rodriguez,
singer.
which was a very famous singer from the 50s and 60s.
Yeah, 50s and 60s.
Interesting.
Which is great.
It reminds me, because I lived in DC for the last 20-something years, and I have a about to be 22-year-old child. Actually, young man now.
Yeah, don't call him a child. He's going to be like, Mom.
He still lets me get away with that, though. But he's deaf. And so that meant that I put him into Gallaudet University early on in his life, like around child development center age. So, around 2. And Gallaudet University, which is a school for the deaf, is centered in a neighborhood called Trinidad. And so what I've always noticed about Gallaudet is how the distinction between Gallaudet University and some of the neighboring communities, and how over the years, it's changed over the years as people begin to move and
come in and out and emigrate and
right.
emigrate and immigrate.
Yes. And so the development has changed, and so then priorities have changed. But I always wondered, to a certain extent, why was there such a differentiation between the campus grounds versus the community that's outside? Mm-hmm. And so it reminds me of some of the... Yeah.
It's very similar to that. We have Awilda Sterling, who lives a couple of doors down. She is Afro-Caribbean, Puerto Rican, and also from some of the islands. Mm-hmm. And she was telling us, you remember the story, Ozzy, that she told us that when she was little, she used to go to Sagrado Corazon, which at that time was a school for girls. It was a very, very exclusive girl.
That's right. Run by nuns, if I'm not mistaken.
Nuns, the Sacred Heart nuns.
Yes.
And she would peek over. That's what she said, right? She would peek over.
Yes.
She would peek over the fence just to see what they, what they were doing.
And there was a wall.
There's still a wall.
There absolutely is.
And it's kind of like you have, and I mean, no offense to Sagrado Corazon, because, structures are different and, it was another time. Yeah. But it's intimidating because you have these walls that, people from this neighborhood who were maybe interested in taking classes or going to university are kind of like, wow, it's kind of like, are you letting people, is the wall to keep people out or keep people in?
Yes.
Which is kind of like the wall that our little friend.
It brings a question about progression in relationship to real estate and property, and also the relationship between once an institution is built versus the environments and neighborhoods around it, and what happens when the institutions either are involved with the community or are not involved with the community, and the ramifications of that when it comes to, especially when those institutions are in areas that are impoverished and or under maintained, and where marginalized people live. And I don't know specifically about Sagrado Corazon, but I know Gallaudet, that I've always questioned. What are they doing in relationship to the outside their gates? Mm-hmm. Because and Sagrado de Corazon, I mean, Gallaudet is a little different because, they are, if you are deaf, you are considered having a disability, and so that puts you under the American Disability Act and some other things that come into play with that action. But also, people have not always treated people with disabilities very well. So to some extent, I understand the gates when it comes to, but as the years have moved on, time has moved on, what about the community outside of your gates?
It's changing. I think it's changing. There are some programs that they are trying to.
Well, that's in Sagrado, there have been programs that they tried to reach out to the community, but obviously, with COVID and all of this, those things.
Yeah, that's definitely changed.
But they are, and I'm not. I think inside the university you have different ways or different groups and way of thinking are more open than other ones.
Yeah, and it depends on who's running, who's the president, who's the administration.
Exactly, but I think in Puerto Rico right now things are changing a lot. So they are open up to understand.
And realize my commentary is not specifically about either Gallaudet or
it's in general.
It's in general. It's about once you've decided to invest in a community, invest in a property. To my thinking is then how dare you not invest in the surrounding, at least relationships with the surrounding neighborhoods, and to see, because one of the things I tried really early in my son's life to say, baby, deafness is only an aspect of who you are, and people don't realize when you have a deaf child, it takes away, because. Good Lord, when I was getting my degree in Trinity College, and I was like, I'm finally going to be able to take on Spanish again as an adult, and I'm going to do this, and da-da-da-da. And then I found out my child was deaf.
Wow.
And I could not do I'm not Superwoman, I could not do it for all. So I had to say, look, Spanish is going to have to wait for me, And I decided to learn American Sign Language. So I'm a fluent American Sign Language.
Wow.
To talk with my child.
Right.
And so throughout his life, I would tell him, he would push back a little bit when I would try to give him a little more exposure, and I would say to him, I want you to have a choice. I want you to function as a fully functional human being in the deaf community, but also I want you to be able to choose and say, I'm going to take on the hearing community as well, because of course, hearing people, they have their biases. And so it's amazing as an adult when we have questions about his placement in college and some of the decisions that he's making. He told me, Mom, I've decided to go to a different school than Gallaudet when it comes, because he plays football as well, and he's studying accounting and business.
So different from you. Oh my God.
It is, and I'm perfectly okay with that.
That's cool.
Yeah, perfectly okay with that. But what I'm proud of is that he just said when he decided to leave Gallaudet and go somewhere else, he said, Mom, because they're not challenging me enough. I want to be able to go in and out and navigate these, any environment. And he said, and that means that I need a different challenge. And I was like, thank you, God. Thank you, universe. I'm not a religious person, but I'm a spiritual person. Mm-hmm. And that was one of the things, because when parenting is no fucking joke. No fucking joke. And so there are things, threads of information, threads of love, threads of details that you want to impart on your children and imprint on your children. And I was like, God bless, thank you that is one that actually imprinted and stayed. And then he's able to navigate and put forth some decisions to make that happen in his own life. So
wow,
that means
you're a good mother.
A good job.
I did what I could. It was absolutely hard.
And you did it correctly. Oh, wow.
Yeah. So
should I keep going?
So another thing that I wanted to say about, we can look at any of these.
Let's talk about this one. This is one of my favorites.
It feels like an altar sometimes. They look like little altars.
Shut up.
Yes, it looked like. I was going to tell you that.
I love that compliment. Thank you. Thank you very much. So this, I'm the little figure right here. Rafael, we went to go see, I can't remember, I think we were turning on the electricity or the water in our apartment. And so there was a mural that I was looking at. And so he took a picture of me looking at the mural. And so when I was creating this work, I decided to put me at the bottom left to talk about how I was experiencing Puerto Rico. you know?
Yeah.
So that was really important to me. And then this one, I was also referring to the, what do you call those? Where you hang the clothes?
Oh, like the clotheslines, like the el tendedero.
Yes.
You like that, huh?
That's part of. Well, it's a staple.
It is.
It's absolutely, and it's not only a staple in Puerto Rico. It's a staple in the islands.
Yes.
Because we don't want to use the resources for the electricity.
And it's more expensive in the
Yes.
islands.
And let me tell you, it takes longer.
It absolutely does.
You can hang your clothing like outside. And
In an hour, they're done.
In an hour is done.
Yeah, we decided to not do the dryer,
Yeah.
and it is a staple.
It is. It absolutely is. I mean, and if you think about it, it's a level of recycling and or managing your power, your what is that? Your staple, your imprint, your
like the human imprint,
Yes.
or your you know what I mean, like the
Yes.
Carbon.
their carbon
Yes,
imprint.
thank
There
you,
we go.
thank
Thank
you.
you.
High five. So that was one of the things that represented.
And that's like, there with having you go back to the other one, and they're having you so small. Then, because before I thought they were small altars, but now I'm realizing that they're not small altars. Like in the way that you're developing them, they're actually very large.
They're actually very large,
and they exist in their own space.
How I relate to them, yes, yeah. So what's interesting about this is this work is also a sort of models for a larger series that I'm working on now, which is called Successions. And that is going to be presented. It was also supposed to be presented this year, but COVID-19 happened. And so luckily, very luckily, and I'm grateful for it, it's been moved to 2021, and it'll be in August at American University, their Katzen Arts Museum.
Very cool.
So what we realized is that once I started working on those works, and those works are going to be on quilts. So they are assemblage, collage on quilts. And as I was working, I realized that the rubber tree was continuing in those works. And the engagement of night and day was also continuing in those works. So instead of
there's roots. I mean, I see that it's like a tree, and it's kind of, obviously it's a stylized tree.
Yeah.
Parecen las mantas escocesas.
It looks like
the Scottish.
It's kind of like Czech.
Las mantas
like the
escocesas
plaid.
para la cama.
Las mantas.
¿Qué es
Sí,
las mantas?
Like these blankets.
Los
quilts.
Los quilts,
Sí.
que cubren las camas, los escoceses que hacen con distintos tipos.
Sí, pero eso
¿no?
también in the United States there's also, and it varies because, in the South there's a type of quilt making, and in
definitely.
the North there's another type of
Absolutely.
quilt
I would
making.
love to
Absolutely.
have that one.
Absolutely.
That's amazing.
So what I got, I have a really supportive curator, Larry Osa-Mensah, and then also the curator of the American University Katzen Center, which is Jack Rasmussen. And so I basically said to them, you know what? I want a couple of these two exhibits. I want a couple of these two series, A Place of Breath and Birth and Successions, and I want to show them together. And they said yes. So
You were like, yes.
Yes, because it's an interconnected conversation about identity and about placemaking and about cultural spaces, and so
it gives you a feeling of there's kind of like a tension there between like reality and the spiritual world, and what presents, how we see the world, because there are things that'll like today we had that conversation when you were looking at the spoons that I took from my grandmother's house, and you develop a connection, and you develop.
You absolutely do. You do, and it's I think it's imperative for being able to kind of coexist in this universe, because I don't think that the present versus the past and versus future. We always are in this continuum of thinking either one, two, or three, right? Mm-hmm. What we've been told about how we understand the world and how we relish in the world, because there's so much to take in, whether good, bad, or indifferent. And what I believe is that you have to, for the most part, be in the present as much as possible.
Yes.
Because the moment is all you have, technically, because once you understand that the world is not about, we are not in control. basically.
Right.
And so I try and put that into my work in this relationship between past, present, and future, and what we hold on to, the energies that literally are with us if you're aware, if you're willing to hear, if you're willing to see, and if you're willing to exist in them. And I also think that some of that is about maturity and age anyway.
Totally.
Because this sounds gibberish to someone that is like, yo, I'm just getting in my car and I'm rolling, or I'm,
Exactly.
And to some degree it should be. We all have to live through that part of our energies and our life and our life experience.
It's like we live in like these three dimensions, the past, the present, and the future are these three dimensions we have, things that we drag and things that we see now in the now and the future. And I think COVID has really helped us to say, all right, this is what's happening now. And we can't really plan. And even if you plan,
there's still up in the air. There's still the what happens that is out of our control. Yeah, it's absolutely. And so I want to go back because you brought up a really important part of that whole past, present, and future. So we were talking about the spoons. I noticed the spoons when I was putting honey in my tea, and the spoon was it was like slender at the top, but then it curved, and I was like, oh my gosh, such a seductive, to me it was like the curve. I love the curve of the spoon. And then you began to talk about how it reminds you of your grandmother, and it takes you back to that space, makes you feel comfortable, and I was like, that is such a gift, because literally that is how then you take the past into your future, and it can go both ways. It can go with negative energy, and it can go with positive energy. And so what I believe is that living in that flux, living in your best energy, is to have the gift of being able to take something from your past that is, intuitive, that is precious, and be able to relive it, to almost like re-energize yourself.
Totally.
And then be able to move forward. So.
Can we see some of your larger installations?
Well, sure, definitely.
Or is there another
I think there's one more right underneath it.
Mira,
Yes, that one is what's that one called? Elemental. See, and then it's earth, air, water, fire. There's elemental aspects of my work that I work through, and so I was looking at the seismic. So with all the earthquakes that were happening, and as we went back and forth from Puerto Rico, and then sometimes Rafael would be here if I had something to do, like a talk or take down an installation, a public art installation, all that type of stuff. And so he would send me the seismic activity, the pictures of the earthquakes. And so the things that are surrounding the sphere here are my translations of the seismic energy that was happening under the water through these earthquakes.
And I love the way that you connect, kind of like Earth, like the Earth as the mortality of the Earth, and also like the infinity of the universe, and these other things that we don't understand that exist around us that we're still trying to figure out. Like we can't predict earthquakes, for example, and it's kind of like you're tapping into that spiritual part of it where you're trying to put it in an image, like a feeling in an image.
Yeah, that is absolutely what I'm trying to do.
Yes, high five.
That is absolutely what I'm trying to do. So I'm glad that that's conveyed, and I love the fact that you point out that that they look like altars as well. I think because I knew so early that I wanted to be an artist, I knew around 8 or 10 years old, and I knew that one of the things that made me feel good about self, that made me thrive, that made me happy. I remember my first art teacher, her name was Miss Rebold, and she made such a big deal about my work, and showed it to the class. It was this Christmas collage. And that was one of the moments that has replayed throughout my life, beyond all of the energy that and time and compassion that my mother has put into me in relationship to my art. So it was just one of the notions that I grew up with, knowing that this was something that I was good at. It made me feel good, and I was able to communicate through and to others about myself and about things that are in my environment and my social and my beliefs.
Mm-hmm.
So.
And they're alive. I mean, I look at them as altars, but this one has blood that's running within it, that it's like growing, and it's just not only a tree or a plant, but it's a being. And it's kind of like being born from that, Yeah, it is. I mean, it's incredible how it's like, and there's birth in it also. I mean, we can look at the center of it, and it could be like the birth canal, and it's kind of like opening it up. You're really piercing through dimensions, and you're piercing through the universe, and also how spirituality changes within our physical realm and our subconscious realm and the universal realm that I'm talking about.
Can you put that in writing?
I can do it. Yeah, sure. I'll get that for you. But yeah, that's what I'm feeling.
Thank you for saying.
But that's the feeling that I'm getting for this.
You.
It beats. It has like a heartbeat.
Pulse.
It is.
Yes. Oh, I'm so glad. I got 6 more to go in that series.
Oh yeah, man. Oof.
But yeah, so let's go. She wants to go to the
let's take a look at the installations, because your installations are very large.
Yeah, I love working large.
And I love that.
Okay, I'm trying to figure. I don't know if I can direct you without seeing it.
Yeah. Mira, así, cara, que lo vea ahí.
Okay, so let's go to public art installation. Okay, so go to the top one. This is fertile grounds of mind. Fertile grounds of mind, of wombs, and of the earth. So that was a commissioned installation done with 2 organizations. One was called Dashboard, which is a curatorial organization in Atlanta, I believe, and then also.
Súbelo un poquito porque se ve ahora se ve entero. Okay, there we go.
And then a recently started residency program called the Nicholson Project by a woman by the name of Stephanie Reiser, who is a realtor, or she remodels and builds homes, basically.
Okay, all right.
And she has always had an appreciation for art and decided that she wanted to create a residency program, a home that was dedicated for artists to come in and out and do their work through in Southeast DC. And I live in Southeast DC. So I was their first participant, and then they also commissioned me to create this large-scale room installation. And so a lot of my work is about not only my womanhood, but also my life experience. And, in 2009, I went through this really traumatic thing with my family. And so much so that my mother and I decided, once we found out what was really going down at that point, we got back home and we decided that I needed to make altars. That it was so deep, what I call deep and spiritual, that I needed to make an altar in my home so that I can consciously work on what was going on.
Right.
To be able to deal with it, and then also, to project what I wanted forward. So, and I say that because you mentioned altars. And so from that point, I became more conscious of altars. I realized that there were beginnings of altars already in my space, my living space.
Right.
And then I needed like a couple more elements to make them formal, altars that I could interact with in that way, on a more conscious level. So this is literally an altar that speaks to women's bodies and our relationship to the earth, and our relationship of how we interact with trauma and things that are foreign objects and energy that are not supposed to be in our bodies. So this is literally like my version of a 3-dimensional uterus.
Oh, yes. Okay. Yeah, I totally. Yep. Because you have the triangle in the bottom that refers to.
Yes. Rafael would tease me. He's like, how's the uterus doing? And he would mean, how's the installation? Are we going to, because we had talks there and things like that. And I'd be like, ha ha ha, real funny. But, so what I did was the trash around it is I petitioned my niece. It's been 3 years since we've been collecting plastic materials that I would either use at home, and we'd cut them into circles and things like that, because I wanted it to represent not only negative energy to some extent, but energy for things that we have not figured out how to recycle into our universe without hurting our universe. And so I am juxtaposing this to how women are treated in our society, and also how things like, for example, a tampon is toxic. So you literally want the women that bear the world, babies and generations of existence. You want us to put toxic tampons in our vaginas. I don't understand. And then this also, it speaks to the slivering of women when it comes to the slivering that our society does to women when it comes to dealing with us, managing us from that perspective. Meaning that, they love us when it comes to our sexuality, when it comes to giving pleasure and not necessarily receiving pleasure. We're not supposed to receive pleasure.
Exactly, and we're not supposed to have, and we're not supposed to have fun with it, all, because that's, oh my God, no.
Unless it's with that one, the partner thing.
Exactly.
But yet, and I point out when I gave talks to teens, there was a program that was with the Hirschhorn, and they brought one of their teen programs in, and I said, most of you most likely have an aunt, a mother, a niece, a grandmother that has had either a cyst or fibroid in their body, but yet you don't have a conversation with them about their general health. And not you, meaning they won't have a conversation with you because they've been trained not to. And I was like, but when they...
And it's kind of like menopause. Nobody teaches you about that. We know nothing about it until it happens. And then it's like, oh, that's menopause. And you're
and hey, the period, remember the period that changed all of our existences after 9? Hello?
Yeah.
And so in some sense, this is also challenging how we pay attention to womanhood and women in our society. We are not just sexual beings that give pleasure. We are people that, literally bring in generations of existence into this world. And we need to be looked at as whole human beings. And so, for example, the amount of funding that goes into the research that is researching what fibroids are and how they impact our body and how they accumulate in our body. And it there's metaphysical beliefs that it is about the not being able to deal with trauma, trauma and toxicity within our bodies, within the stuff, the shit that is put into our food.
Totally.
So but there's a belief that it's it's a combination of the two, and so literally I
like the idea that it's kind of like what I see in the center is fractured. Yeah. And it's kind of like it moves. Does it move?
It absolutely moves. Yes.
So
I'm
it's
sorry.
alive.
I don't think I have a video of it, but it absolutely moves. Yeah. And then can you go down? There's views from the side, further down. So that's like the beginnings of it. And there should be, if you go down a little bit more.
Un poquito más para abajo.
Yeah, that's from the side. And so then you begin to see the slivers, the layers of the literally the like abstracted uterus. And then those are the fibroids on the bottom.
Oh, right. The little, gosh. And it's funny because, fibroid, it can be cancerous and sometimes it's not cancerous, but it's still painful.
Yeah.
And,
or it can be. Yeah.
And also, it's...
And it can go unknown. I didn't even know I had. This is me dealing with having fibroids and realizing how the parallels between what our society, does about women's health.
And it's kind of like, when you go to a doctor, I stopped going to doctors that are men because it's always like, it doesn't hurt that much. Oh, it's not that bad. And it's kind of like, I am in pain here, dude.
Yeah. So when I saw one of the doctors that was in relationship to the fibroids that I had, one of the things that they were like, oh, well, we really don't need to remove them if they're not causing you pain or if they're not this. And can you really, the conversation in relationship to what else the fibroids were causing in relationship to, having a period or a heavy period. But also one of the largest reasons for them deciding to take it out was because I did not want to, cease my option to have children. And what bothered me about that is that I'm not saying I want more kids, because I don't think I want more kids, but it's my fucking right to have my body functioning to be able to say, okay, I do want another one.
Exactly.
But there was a little bit of fringing on but if you don't think you're going to have any more kids, then you should keep these foreign things in your body. Fuck you. No, absolutely not. And or the hop to the quick, you could have a hysterectomy. Fuck you. Exactly. This here is supposed to be, meaning my uterus is supposed to be in my body. All the things, and there's no studies that have been done about women that have been having their uteruses taken out from a hysterectomy, and how that impacts them, in relationship to mentally. And no. So it just talks about some of the things that are not talked about in relationship to women's health. And so I wanted to do a work that was literally an altar, because some of the name Fertile Grounds is we are these fertile beings, and what you put in us, what you say to us, whether that be words, whether that be music, and how you refer to us. What we eat, and it's not just what others put into us, it's also what we put into ourselves.
True.
But literally what you put in is going to manifest something.
Of course.
And that's what this work is about.
I love the idea that it's that also like the altars that we were looking in the other images, like the collages, it's alive.
Thank you.
It's moving, it's beating, it's and the movement that it has, and even the collages have their own movement. But here it's like you're taking the collage and you're like making it alive. Making it present. It's right in front of you, and that's when you realize that the altars in the collages are actually very large, and it just becomes a very large area of a very large area and a large thought over our own bodies, and we can also take this idea of, fertile grounds and compare it to planet Earth and how Earth is being raped constantly and being, pumped, like toxic, all these toxic things, and how they're destroying forests and how it's, and, I don't think we call it Mother Nature, out of anything. I see the planet as a woman, as a person that reproduces.
And that's another level of what this work is about. Because I didn't mention, like, for example, abuse, physical and mental abuse, but literally how you treat your mother, how you treat your aunt, how you treat your daughter. Oh God, please treat your daughters well.
Yes.
Please. How you treat your loved ones, your grandmother, your girlfriend, your wife. We are fertile beings. So what you give into us, it manifests in some shape or form.
Exactly.
And that's part of, I think that's an overall narrative of my work in general.
I think that's, we're the ones that, women are usually the ones that pass on stories and pass on songs and pass on any type of culture, there are men that do it, but it's usually, you go to your grandmother's house and because it's very common for Latinos and African Americans and also Afro-Cuban, Caribbean, to have an altar in your house.
Yes.
It's very common, to have. Yeah, she's like, wait a second.
I was like, let me readjust. Yes.
It's like, here we go. but it's very common.
Oh, it absolutely is. And what I've realized is actually, I recently, 2015, I went with my brother and I to Thailand. And one day I decided I'm going to go to Thailand. It was like 2 a.m. and I bought 2 tickets. And I really wanted my mom to go, but that lady works too damn much. And so I had to take my brother. Not complaint, just, But one of the things I noticed as we were traveling in Thailand is that there are altars everywhere.
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 And we have one here.
In
in the table.
Oh, yeah.
In the
Nice,
living room
nice.
table,
In the
we
living
have
room
one.
too. Yeah.
I'll have to look before. And so it wasn't just that they had the oh god, what do you call that? Where the Buddhists, the monks are.
Oh.
The what are those things called? Damn
Like
it.
the temple where
Shrines.
Oh,
Yes,
the shrines.
shrines and
Yes,
temples.
shrines.
Yes.
Yes.
They literally, so in a mall, so how they divvy up a mall is they have stores on the outside, like when you're inside of the mall, stores on the outside, but also they have like a second line of stores that are in cubicle type things. And in these cubicles, each one had some sort of shrine, an altar,
And flowers and candles.
it's literally a mini set of like an altar. It was amazing to me. So I went to town. I was like snapping pictures everywhere. I loved it. And so it just reinforced, my beliefs about being past, present, and future, and this flux of energy that we have, a flux of spirituality that you can have when it comes to your mentality. And it amazed me, how all of these people, their spirituality was traveling with them. Their flux between past, present, and future, and how they perceive themselves within their society.
And then having them in present also, like
Yes.
you feel how the energy evolves and changes, and it's like, whoa.
And so one of the ones I noticed was like outside of a larger like a department store inside of the mall, and then you notice that it so happened as I was taking a picture of it, one of the women was coming out to re-up the arrangement. And so they do this daily, changing of giving the offers.
Exactly.
And then there's like bottles. And what amazes me about these things is that some of them were, the past, present, and future is apparent in what the actual structures that were part of it. So, for example, there was more. I'm not saying they were historic in relationship to how old they were, but the representation of a historic altar was there, right? And then you have the present food, like it wasn't rotting or anything like that. And then you also have like meaning the grains and everything, but then you also have like the Fanta bottle,
right? Yeah,
so
because
it was literally this moving flux of religious beliefs and spirituality, back and forth.
With the contemporary and the
Absolutely.
ancient and the contemporary. I mean, it's very
Absolutely.
present, and it's awesome
Absolutely.
how they've, I really enjoy how they combine. Just it just trespass. I mean, it's timeless.
It absolutely is, and I felt that every time I saw it. I would get giddy just to see, and it amazed me because, like I said, I'm not religious, but I love that people allow their love for life, to show and be represented in that way. And I hope, my only problem with sometimes religion is when it's impeding on somebody's growth and their humanity and their way of somewhat uplifting themselves and their families.
And they don't also, religion prevents them to think
outside of
the,
yes, that's where my problem with religion.
That's my problem with religion too. It's kind of like they're trapped in this idea, and this is the correct way, and that's it.
Right.
But we're so different.
Pain and regret.
Well,
I don't want to have pain. I don't want to have pain and
suffering.
regret. I want to have like a hope.
Yes.
And redemption.
And so it's this big what's that called? This seesaw.
Yeah.
Because I know that their spirituality and their religious beliefs is also what maintains them to still gives them hope, and even pride.
Right.
But then you don't know, because it's an assumption that my assumption that within that there's also this restrictiveness about what they can and cannot do, and that's because of my social construct around religion. And some of it is a reality, but it's still their choice to be in that reality, and so it's an amazing continuum.
And happiness, they talk about happiness as well. They smile all the time and being humble.
Usually,
well, I definitely noticed humble, but I didn't see smile all the time. There's different variances of that. That's not what I. Although because we went to a couple different areas in Thailand. But yeah, it was a wonderful experience.
I mean, it's incredible how you have these religions, the Judeo-Christianic, Christian baggage that we have on ourselves, which is shame, and well, not in the Jewish part, because they have more. I mean, it's more intellectual and it's more question everything, but still, there's still a sense of suffering, and in Catholicism, for example, or in most parts in any type of variation of Christianity, and here and evil and
versus good,
and it's kind of like instead of shaming us, instead of making us feel terrible for what we are, how about we open up? How about we, like you said, how about we all get together? I mean, prayer is meditation. And it's positive, and it's a way, any type of meditation is positive. And I don't need shame in my life, and I don't need to be afraid. I don't want to be a God-fearing person. Why do I have to, I mean, I'm not religious, but I'm saying, and why do I have to, here in Puerto Rico, there's a thing that says, humíllate ante Dios, humiliate yourself in front of God, which to me is just terrible every time I hear it. And it's like,
there are so many layers of when it comes to religion.
I know, it's like,
oh my God.
But yeah, it can get really interesting and very sticky sometimes.
Yeah,
Vamos a ver seguimos mirando.
Oh yeah, I think there's one more, but if we want to jump to another one, that's just another side view.
We can jump to. Is there one that you'd like to talk about that we can jump right after this one?
Okay, you got to go back to the list.
This is live webcasting. Okay, you're allowed to be thinking and taking your time. Okay,
yeah.
Take your time.
You got to go back to the main. Oh, actually, this. But you know what? The video. I don't know what music I put to the video, so that might be loud. Would you? Because I love putting my music to video. My artwork to music.
Okay, let's do it.
If you go to my Instagram, you can see all the videos I do.
I can play it.
Okay. Let's hope it plays. And it's not one. Oh, okay. There's no music on this one. Huh? But this is where you can see. Yeah, the live.
Wait.
Oh, I think we were still doing some of the installing at that point.
But yeah, I see the movement in there, and just the way that it kind of, you're kind of trespassing dimensions and moving around just a plane,
Oh, you're saying all my terminologies. I'm not talking about planes of existence.
Excellent.
Okay, if you go back to the very top, there's one that I'd like to talk about. Okay, go to Above All You Must Not Play at God.
Oh, which this one.
See, so in 2015, I got approached by a friend and a curator to work with. She was curating a show in New York, and she wanted people to work with wood. And I fussed at her, and I'm like, I don't work with wood. But I was like, but I'll take the challenge, And so and I was reading the book called The Immortal Life of Henrietta Lacks.
Right.
Have you heard about it?
Yeah, I've heard of it.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to go into just a little bit because I'm sure not everybody's heard of Henrietta Lacks.
Sure.
But she, in the 1950s, she was an African-American woman who lived in the Baltimore area near Johns Hopkins University. And at that point, Johns Hopkins gave, I think it was considered free health care to basically poor people in that neighborhood, which were predominantly black. The problem with that was that it also meant that they felt that they had the right to do whatever to
experimentation, just like they did here in Puerto Rico.
Right.
We were experimented on by the United States. I just wanted to let that out. Anyway, yep,
and it happens in indigenous and impoverished communities throughout the world. But in this specific case, she was having pain in her abdomen, and she went in to get what do you call that? Lord, I hate when I forget words. when they look at your vagina, basically. What is that?
Oh, the pap smear, is it?
Well,
or is it
a pelvic exam or something like that?
I think it's yeah.
Yes, thank you. And we should know these things,
Yes,
right?
right. But they don't teach us, so we kind of figure it out when we go to the doctor.
So she was getting a pelvic exam, and the doctor that she had an agreement with, she was getting care from, invited somebody else to scrape her pelvic area, and literally her vagina, and take samples of her cancer. So the thing is, if you've ever heard of HeLa cells, which is it's the acronym for her name, Henrietta Lacks.
Yeah.
And HeLa cells are what her cancer cells evolved to become, because literally they call it the immortal life of Henrietta Lacks because her HeLa cells never died. And they are the impetus of a multi-billion trillion dollar industry. What is the medical industry? Because her cells never died, they were able to use them to test them against and with everything that we've come up with in relationship to having vaccines and medicines. And so they didn't, at one point, they didn't want to admit that this could possibly be in existence and be attributed to a black woman.
Of course.
So that's why they took the first two letters of her first name, H-E, and the first two of her last name, and L-A, and made it HeLa cells. They were trying to hide that this was a black woman's and a poor black woman's.
And a poor black, right, cells. Exactly.
Because that questions the misnomer of that there could be no good or no worth, no value, no infinite possibility when it comes to thinking and being and behaving downward towards people that are not rich.
Exactly.
And not educated.
And actually, you see this today because there is a problem with, with the COVID vaccine testing. A lot of people, black and brown, don't want to go and be guinea pigs.
Nope.
Because we've already been guinea pigs for too long.
We're still dealing with your effects of their choosing us to.
And you wonder why the rates here in Puerto Rico, the cancer rates here in Puerto Rico are so high, and why the cancer rates are so high or any other disease in areas that are either very diverse. That not necessarily are I'm talking about different types of economical levels. It's not only the poor, it's also, it's just that they were minorities or considered minorities at the moment. So you see all these things, and they're using us as guinea pigs. So again, we have the European gaze, which is like, well, they're not worth it, so let's test it on them, because the next best thing are monkeys. You know what I mean?
Rats, mice,
or rats,
animals. Yeah.
Animals.
Yeah, it's horrific. It's absolutely horrific that the value of human life is being equated to such, to
essential or non-essential.
Yeah.
But yeah, look, now we're going to talk a little bit about the installation.
Yeah. Okay. So back.
Yeah, because Aussie's like,
yes.
We're gonna be ending soon. We can talk for hours.
I know we probably could. So what I did was I decided, a lot of my work is working with fabric. I decided I wanted to weave branches, and I was looking at the branches as a metaphysical representation of DNA, because looking at her life, literally her cells living, her cancer cells living up until, in fact, they have never died. And underneath the installation is slivers of the Hippocratic Oath.
Right.
And so I'm posing.
Yeah.
I'm posing not only in relationship to medical employers, doctors, nurses, but also anybody that is in a government paid position. So whether that's someone who's handing out or dealing with people that are trying to get Medicaid, or people that are the post office, police officers, because part of the Hippocratic Oath is saying that that you will treat people.
And you will do no harm.
Exactly, because that's what. In fact, the line of this work, of the title, is above all, you must do no harm. That's actually in the Hippocratic Oath. The problem is that, and this is the problem with American society, and society in general, is that so many of our infrastructures are based on racist foundations. So even the Hippocratic Oath, which is the one of the oldest fucking documents that says you should treat people well as you care for, give them the best health care, blah, 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 blah. But literally in there, it says that this is this is not pertain to black people.
Totally.
or brown people. So I am literally challenging that. And one of the the sticks, I think, on the far right, is called Without a Black Woman's Consent. Each stick has a name. One of them is I've named for the children of Henrietta Lacks. Because one of the horrible things about this story is that, there was the author of the book is called Rebecca Scoot, and she decided to write the book about, when she found out about Henrietta Lacks' life and dive into and really get into their family history. So this book, I've been talking about this for almost maybe 2 or 3 years, but so this book is probably 10 plus years old now. But when it first came out, slightly before that, her family didn't even know that her cells were still alive.
So they're making money off of that. Well, there we go.
So, and then they realized that they had no power over something that their mother was a genetic part of. They had no power over what was happening to her name, her story, and her continual use of her cells. Right. So this was just a story that I had to keep on, talking about. And so what I then began to do was I began to get commissions to talk about, because in this you can talk about race. You can talk about social economics. You can talk about, bias, institutional bias, because you're putting it on a realm of one medical, the industry, and the fact that most people get vaccinations, and because of that, because of her cells, you can actually live longer. There's a whole list of what her cells impacted and made the medical industry build off of. I think in vitro fertilization was because of her. All we know how and why our cells react to. What is that called? Radio.
Right, the radioactive.
Yes,
and things.
Her cells have been up to the moon and back. There's a whole long list. I can't remember all of them right now, but it's just intricate.
And it's incredible how they kept it secret.
Yeah.
And
if you don't seek out the information, if there's not a specific need, if you're not in that area, meaning Baltimore, or if you're not in the science industry, right. And so. I then began to do what I call workshops and/or commissions, where I would. There was a university that said one of their students came back. One of their students of color said, I need you guys, after you graduated, he said, I need you to know how hard it was to be in your university, being of color, and blah 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 blah. And so what they did was they contacted me and said, I had a conversation with the curator, and I was like, oh yeah, I did this workshop, blah blah blah. And so then I had it on a large scale. I think about 80-something people came from students and faculty members, and we did the whole where we actually create talking sticks. Because then, if you know about talking sticks, they're of indigenous use,
right?
And it basically used to give a person that is speaking your whole intent, and then you can kind of project a cause, a need. Something that you want to have a greater discussion on in a very ethical and humanitarian, humanity-based discussion on, and that's how I. Because
another thing, it just kind of makes it tangible, because we talk and it's ephemeral, and we're just making we're making sounds to create sentences and things, and it disappears. But as you have the stick in your hand, it's just kind of like it's present. Yep. It's there, and now it's my turn, because the idea is also, apart from the spiritual idea, is kind of giving everybody turns.
Exactly. It's an equalizer.
It's an equalizer, right. And that's why you use...
Yes.
There we go.
Yeah. So if you go, I want to show one of the larger installations. If you go to, at the altar, what's this one called? Talking Sticks. Go down to Talking Sticks projects. Right there.
Sorry.
See. quiet. So I don't know which one's going to pull up. They should be, I've done at least 3 or 4 of these. And so one was in a student, like a student hall at Salisbury. It's not working?
Let me see. I will try again.
Oh, there it is. Okay, so
This one is not coming.
Go to this one now.
That's coming.
It's moving.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Let's see which one.
It's like drum roll.
Okay, so this was in this really large. Sometimes when I photograph it doesn't what I consider not doing it justice.
Yep. I know what you mean.
Yes, and some of that is because it happens when I use talking sticks, but also because I'm using fabric and I'm weaving slender or things that have. That you have layers behind it,
Right?
So you lose some of the ephemeral energy that happens when you're in the space. But this is part of the installation that I did for a university called Salisbury University. So I was paid to do the actual talking stick workshop, and then the talking stick an actual installation. And this was like a 40-50 feet installation, so you can't see it from this particular view.
But I like the idea that you can go up to the little balcony and just kind of have it.
And then you could literally look up, and it went all the way up. Whoa. It's one of those huge buildings with a huge...
with like a cupola on the top, like
yes.
Yeah.
Yes. It was a phenomenal experience. And sometimes I pay my brother to work with me as well, because he's an art installer as well.
Oh, good.
Wow. So from working with me throughout the years, he's become an art installer.
Oh, that's excellent.
And he's an artist too.
My gosh.
So we went to Salisbury University for a week, and we did the install and all that. It's a really wonderful project.
Okay. So should we see one more? We can just end here.
Up to you.
It's up to you. What do you think, Ozzy?
We have the world record in contemporary art talking.
Oh my gosh. How long have we gone?
An hour 36 minutes.
Really? Oh my goodness.
Your website's there, and we've gone through your different types of projects, and I love it how you move from drawing to painting to installation to nature.
I've been doing this for a long time.
Yeah.
I've
been very fortunate to have known for a long time, and then been able to do this for a long time. So I'm able to do my smaller and works and relationships because of the public art or temporary sculptural installations that I get commissioned to do. I'm very grateful.
We invite everybody to go to the website,
yes.
Amber's website, and see, because we have showed the 20% of what is there. So we really encourage and invite everybody to go there and see all this work.
It's Amber Robles-Gordon without the hyphen .com, and I'm on Instagram.
Yes,
Facebook,
she's on Instagram.
Love to get a message or whatever.
Yeah.
So I appreciate you guys. I'm so glad we were able to make this work on such a short trip, 'cause I'm only going to be here for a week. So
yeah, I'm so glad that you're here. And
now Rosario Fernandez is here. So
Rosario Fernandez
sorry?
Yeah, Rosario Fernandez is here.
Is here, so it's a great opportunity for you to meet another Puerto Rican artist.
Awesome.
You will see the family is very big.
Yeah, it's a very big family here in El Cuadrado Gris. And I want to thank everyone who's been watching us. This video, this interview is going to be up, and it's going to be permanent up on the page. So if you missed it, don't worry about it. Just wait a couple of minutes. It's going to go back up. Y nada, cambiamos a español y nada, de nuevo, muchas gracias a todo el mundo quien se conectó. Esperen un par de minutitos. Si llegaron ahora y dijeron, ay, Dios mío, se terminó la entrevista, no se preocupen, que nosotros lo vamos a poner de nuevo. Va a estar permanentemente.
Ya está en
mira, ya está permanentemente.
Ya estamos multiplataforma. Está en YouTube, está en VeoBo, está en mi website también y ahora mismo también está arriba en el cuadrado gris. Así que todo el mundo está más que invitado y los invitamos a que puedan ver esta exhibición que está en línea y todo este trabajo es increíble. Gracias.
Muchas gracias.
Gracias por estar con nosotros, ¿ok?
Gracias.
Un placer tenerte aquí con nosotros. Pues aquí estamos, esto es el cuadrado gris a través de VeoBo desde Barrio Obrero, Puerto Rico para el mundo y seguimos trayendo información que no van a ver en otros lugares, así que gracias por estar con nosotros. Vamos a seguir todo el fin de semana presentando otras cosas más, así que y la semana que viene también. Pues nada, que tengan un muy buen fin de semana, buen viernes, 2 y 5 de la tarde en este momento en Puerto Rico y nos vamos con imágenes de Puerto Rico. Gracias por estar ahí.